If you want to be a hero to your 9th or 10th grader, Hero's Journey from Oak Meadow might be just the ticket. Now, I say that kind of jokingly, but this program has been one of the surprise hits of 9th grade for us. If you are unfamiliar with Oak Meadow, they are one of the oldest homeschool companies. I think they've been around 45 years or so. So they're a long time company. They're Waldorf inspired, but don't let that freak you out if you feel like Waldorf is lots of drawing and pig people and all those beautiful handicrafts and such that you see on channels like Pepper and Pine's channel. That is beautiful stuff, but that is not what Hero's Journey is going to be. Now, I have long looked at Oak Meadow, but it was a pretty pricey curriculum, in my opinion, especially compared with what we usually spend. So when I found this at our homeschool curriculum store, used store, last summer, I grabbed it because it was only $35 and new. This book is $125. So I thought that was an absolutely fantastic deal and totally worth it. And if I didn't like it, I could just take it back and sell it. So today, let's talk about Hero's Journey from Oak Meadow. And then when I'm done talking about it, I will take you over to my desk and we will take a look inside of it. Before we get into my pros and cons and general thoughts about it, I want to give you just a little basic information. As I said, this is for a 9th or 10th grade level. And while I do think that generally you can go up or down a bit with curriculum, I definitely would not use this for an 8th grader unless they are a pretty advanced kiddo, because it is a fast-paced, heavy workload curriculum. Now, the Coursebook is the student book that has all of their assignments, so it is a necessity, and it's $125 for just the book, not the literature books to go along with it. We have gotten all of them from the library, so they are pretty easily accessible books. Now, the teacher's guide is $135, and I did not purchase it, and I'll talk more about that, why, later. Both of these have an online option, but it's not a PDF that you're going to download like traditionally. It says it is a 4-year online subscription. So if you have more than one kiddo who this might be a good fit for, then it works out to be pretty good because it's only $88 for the course book and $95 for the teacher's guide. This is a full 1-year program for your student and English credit. There is literature and writing inside of it. It says that it should be about 5 hours of work. There are 36 chapters, or 36 lessons, 1 week per lesson, and then about 5 hours of work. For my kiddo, that has been an underestimate, a pretty significant underestimate. But it has been more like 7 to 10 hours if we were to do everything that is in each week's lesson. I would say more of an average of 7. There have been a couple weeks where it would have been more than that even, but 5 to 7 hours has been kind of the estimate for us. What appealed to me about it is that it's entirely print. I have no problem with using screens and technology in our homeschool. If you've watched pretty much any other video of mine, you've heard me talk about how we do use it. But last year, it felt like that's all we did for him. And this year, I wanted to pull back a bit where I could. So when I started looking for English ideas for him, this one kept popping up. And again, the price, I was like, oh. Now, $125 for the student book, in reality, is not necessarily crazy. But especially for English, we've pretty much, other than like some outsourced writing classes, we've pretty much done literature for free or minimal for the year. So $125 was a bit steep in my opinion. However, now that we've used it, I think I would absolutely buy it new because it's been worth it to us. And Oak Meadow will definitely be something that I look at for the rest of his high school career as well. So one more thing before I get to the pros and cons is, what is this hero's journey about? Well, the whole book is centered around the idea of a hero going on a journey. So if you think of a typical hero movie, they start out with what they know, and then they're going on an adventure, and then what we might call the climax or the abyss is how this one refers to it, like that. The worst part of it, death, whatever, helplessness. And then they find the courage and they rebound and life is great again, right? So that's what the books are about. They're all story of a hero or the journey of it. And then they take each unit, so there's 6 units in it, and each book is chosen to represent somewhere along that hero's journey. That was something else that was interesting to me, was how they framed the year and the books they chose to go inside of it. Because if you take a look at the different books, you're like, what? Like, how do those go together? Well, they go together for a year because they're all part of a hero's journey. So, pro number 1 for me, like I said, is that everything was print. I was really glad to see nothing was online. Now, that said, we have done like some of the comprehension questions, the essays, etc. online, but we didn't have to do that. And I love that. Number 2, it is a rigorous program. In each unit, your student reads a book, and then within each week, there's reading to do, there are comprehension questions, there's some discussion, there are a couple activities to go inside their reader's journal, then there are some other writing assignments, there's vocabulary. There is a lot to do each week, and not in a busy work kind of way. Everything leads to, everything builds out the book and adds to it. But they do expect that your student will stay on top of it all and is able to really dig in and analyze and critically think about what they're reading. For the first 2 books that we did in it, I was not as well prepared for all of that as I should have been. We're getting ready to start another book, and I'm already reading the book as well as going through it and making my own notes about to help me be able to help him better, if that makes sense. While it is an independent curriculum, my 9th grader he needs a little more help to go with it. And that's not a problem, right? Like 9th graders are still learning how to manage high school and all of the little parts of it and the increased workload. But I needed to be better prepared than what I was. My 3rd pro, going back, is that interesting cycle. I like that there's something different that builds the year rather than, here, this is one good book that you should read. Here's another good book you should read. Here's a book that interests you, which is how we've done literature before now and how I did it with my other 2. But for him, I really like this broader theme around it. But I do have some cons as well. Again, number 1, the cost. Like I said, now that we've used it, I do think it is worth the money. But it is a spending curriculum. Now, there are Oak Meadow Facebook groups where you can buy used curriculum. And number 2, it is a lot of work. As I said, we average somewhere around 7 hours a week of work if we did everything that was in here. And that if is lifting a heavy weight there, because we did not, or we have not so far. I have absolutely cut back on some of it. Like if there are 3 different activities in the journal, reader's journal, I have them choose one, or I choose one, this kind of thing. I don't think the workload is too much necessarily, but that's going to vary by the kiddo. For my kiddo, it has been. We have also taken a little bit longer to get through each unit. Each chapter is supposed to be a week's worth of material, and we've gone a little bit longer than that on some of the weeks. And that's been fine. Like, I knew going into the year that we were going to take this a little slower and carry it over into next year. And I also knew that we would want to intersperse it with a fish tank unit or two, because that's something that's different and really appeals to Matthew. We've used them for 3 years now, maybe 4. My other con is about the teacher's guide. I did not care for it. Originally, since it didn't include it, I was like, oh, do I need it? Do I need it? So I hopped onto their website and looked at their teacher's guide, downloaded a sample of it, and I was completely underwhelmed. I typically don't enjoy, or I typically don't buy teacher's guide, especially when my kids were younger. But high school is another story, because I need that support to know what is expected and what they can really do. Because I don't know, sometimes I tend to be a little bit too easy on my kids or too hard. So I like teacher's guides in high school. I did not like this one. It didn't have what I was looking for. Things like long samples of writing samples. So in Fish Tank, you do get a sample answer. Now, some of them I think I'm not sure how grade appropriate they are, but like I still get a good idea of what kind of details I should be looking for and what level of analysis, critical thinking. They didn't have that in this one. I also didn't see anything about how to help your student write better, information that you might need to give to them. I didn't see any rubrics even, which I don't use that, but that's an important thing that a lot of parents do like. So, teacher's guide, to me, that's a con, especially with an English class where things are not as simple as, did you get the correct math answer? It is an open and go curriculum. The only prep work I have done was just looking ahead at it and getting the library book. But as I mentioned, for the next unit, I am doing a little more preparation and hoping to be a little more ready to help him have success with it. I will definitely keep Oak Meadow in mind for the rest of Matthew's high school. He's a 9th grader. Ben, this would not have been a good fit for Ben or for Elizabeth. So even within my own family, I can see how my other 2 kiddos would not have thrived in this. But for Matthew, it has been absolutely fantastic. Now we're going to look inside the student's course book. I also have the sample of the teacher's one that I will show you too. Very clear table of contents with just enough information about what's showing up in each lesson that you can get a quick idea, but not too many details. I always like that. But they do a nice job laying out what materials, what each part in a lesson includes. So, lesson 1. And again, one lesson is 1 week's worth of materials. They have an assignment summary here that has the check boxes, and they have that on every lesson. The objectives, and then they start the assignments. So they've got the reading, reader's journal, which we use a composition notebook for this. Then the writing. The arc of the hero's journey is really important to read because it sets the whole stage for the whole year. While it's written for your student, I think it's worth you reading it as well. Now, the hero's journey cycle that I mentioned is here. And so we obviously have the starting, call to adventure, threshold, abyss, revelations, return journey. And then they have the sections that describe each of those. But what I want to show you is then how the books line up with that. So, Call to Adventure is Unit 1, and that's like setting the stage for your students. So they're being called to that adventure. Then the Threshold is the book House of Scorpion, and this book lines up with that theming. And then comes the Challenges and Temptations, which is the book Kidnapped. And then we have The Abyss, and that is the book Diary of a Young Girl. So we see the hero's journey within the books, but we also see the books themselves as part of the hero's journey. There is a book called House of Light, which is poetry. Now, admittedly, we have not used that. This year, he has a different book of poetry he's using, and so we decided to skip it. Unit 2 is the Threshold one, and it's the book House of Scorpion. Matthew loved this book so much that there's a sequel to it that we did that after we did this. Unit 2 is a 5-week-long lesson plan. 4 of the weeks is the book, and the last week is final projects. So, again, with a summary, digging deeper, and then we get, this is about typical for the additional reading or the introductory reading in each lesson is somewhere around 2 pages, roughly. Then we have the assignments. Now, I think I mentioned this already, but in the reader's journal, each lesson has somewhere around 3 activities. We have not done all 3 activities in every week. That was one way that we accommodated the workload or reduced the workload. And then the different writing activities, and you'll see different ones each time, but there's usually some kind of a vocabulary one, a short answer, and then some longer writings. In this case, it was a 2 to 3 paragraph one, and writing a letter to one of the characters. And there's always a writing tip as well. Lesson 7 here, as I said, is the final projects essay week. They're given a choice of 3 different projects to do, and there's a nice variety. So one of them was writing about Dia de los Muertos as if you are a journalist. The second option was drawing a scene. So if you have an art lover, that's I like that they include things like that. And then the third choice is about comparing yourself to one of the characters in the book. So it's a really good variety depending on what kind of student you have. And then they give you the final essay. We skipped ahead to Diary of a Young Girl because Matthew was doing 20th century history last semester, and so I wanted to make sure we got this one in as a pairing for it. We're going to go back to the book before this next. So, again, digging deeper, the assignments. Some of the writing and vocabulary assignments, I have had him do it in here, and in other ones, he's completed it in Google Docs. This one especially, we found we needed to take longer. It was supposed to be a 3-week one plus 1 week for the wrap-up. I think we ended up spreading it out over 5.5 weeks. So that's the student book. Now let me show you what I downloaded for the teacher's guide and kind of show you why I felt it was really, really lacking. So, as you can see, it looks just the same, or mostly just the same, I should say. And then here in orange is what the additional information you get. I do like that they say things like students may struggle with this, but then it just says with some extra help, they should be able to come up with creative uses of the word. Okay, but for a parent who doesn't even know how to help, that's not much. These do give actual answers, but then again here, they're supposed to write a scene, and so it says it may be challenging for students. Well, okay, but I don't even get in a sample answer to know how my students' work compares. And this is the kind of thing I think this is helpful, but it just feels lacking to me of what else I may want or what other homeschool parents may want. If I were going to buy this teacher guide, I would definitely do the online version since it is less expensive. But even then, I'm not convinced that I would buy it. I don't know. If I knew for sure I would have more than one student going through any of the specific books, I would. For only one student, I think it would just depend on what the subject is. And maybe other subjects in Oak Meadow have better teacher guides. I don't know. So that is The Hero's Journey by Oak Meadow. Again, this is aimed at grades 9 and 10. I think you could definitely go up if you want a lighter course for an 11th or 12th grader, or if you're supplementing with additional writing. I would not go down to an 8th grade level. And if you want more ideas for English curriculum, click on the playlist on your screen, and I will see you over there.